I've gotten a couple of emails about the Intro to MLA Paraphrasing and Quotations module and the graded assignment in there. The assignment is complete in-text citation and signal phrase practice. Now, depending if you're taking this class as a 15-week or a 7-week, these materials will be in different modules. And so I'm going to use this video for multiple classes, so focus less on the module and more on the assignment title. So we're working on complete in-text citation and signal phrase practice. So first thing to note, this is a long assignment seemingly, but it's not a hard one. And probably what's making a lot of people struggle is that if we look at our weekly to-do list, the videos and readings are pretty extensive, and I definitely know reading about MLA is not fun. But if you're struggling with assignment, there's a good chance you missed these readings and these videos, and that might be why you're struggling. Or if you did read them, there's a good chance you didn't read them as closely as you need to, and sometimes a second or third pass is necessary because it's really hard to digest when you read about MLA. There are a lot of commas and periods and special rules, and they're not fun to read about. So first step, make sure you've done the readings and the viewings. If you have done them once, maybe do them once more. And I bet a lot of the confusion will just melt away after you've processed these materials. Now, assuming you've gone over the materials 2, maybe 3 times, and you're still a little bit lost, I'm ready to help. So let's go ahead and let's open up the complete in-text citation and signal phrase practice. Now, I will admit, the instructions are long and intimidating, and I get that. But instead of writing off the assignment as stupid or overly complicated or too hard or impossible, it's none of those things. So instead of writing it off that way, let's say the instructions are very, very thorough, and they are. And so to simplify, I'm going to go right down to the bottom 5 steps, and I'm going to show you how simple these steps are to follow if you've gone through all of the support materials first and you understand the vocabulary. So I'm going to go ahead and do number 1 for you. That way you get a free answer out of the deal, and you get an example of what your answers should look like. So step number 1, I guess our pre-step, the very first thing we want to do is let's take the quote they give us and let's paste it into a Word file so we can work on it. So that's our pre-step. So for each one of the quotes, there are 10 of them. First thing, copy and paste the entire quotation into a Word document. All right, so now let's work through each of the 5 steps. Correctly identify what information should be put in the parentheses for a correct in-text citation. If you went through the support materials, you know that the information needed would be some kind of identification of the author or text and page number. Well, below each quote, we get the information we need. It tells us the quote is taken from blah, blah, blah. So we want to scan this and we want to look for the author's name and page number. And sure enough, we have both of those things. But if we went through the support materials, we know we can't put DeBose page 921. There's a special way to put this in the parentheses, and that's what number 1 is all about. What information should be put in the parentheses for a correct in-text citation? To make it correct, it's just last name and page number, nothing else. So let's add that. So we've completed step 1. We've identified the correct information that would go in the parentheses for an in-text citation. Number 2, let's add a signal phrase. So if you went through the materials on the previous page, you know what a signal phrase is. It's some kind of a clause, a group of words that lets readers know a quotation is coming. You can't just begin on a quotation. Readers need some kind of a flag that says, hey, get ready for quoted material. So we want to introduce our quotes. So I'm going to go ahead and come up with an introduction here. And this has to flow smoothly. So use your ear. I'm going to read my signal phrase and the quote together. Critics often argue that when superheroes are labeled vigilantes by the government, though, it's not simply because they're conservative where they should be liberal or vice versa. The issue is instead one of control. And that was said by DuBose on page 921. So you notice the flow. My introductory signal phrase flows nicely with my quote, and that's something you want to be mindful of. That's all about style. So we've completed step 2. We've created a signal phrase to introduce our quote. Step 3, this is an easy one. Put your signal verb, your action word, in bold or underline it. So my signal phrase. Critics often argue. There's my verb. A verb is an action word, and you can argue, so there's my action. I'll identify it. Step 3 is an easy one. All right, step 4. Determine if parentheses are even necessary after your signal phrase. So the rule is this. You need to name the author either in the signal phrase or in the parentheses, one or the other. And if you look here at our example, the example that the instructional designers gave us, they name the author in the signal phrase, and so they only need the page number at the end. That's one way to do it, and that works great. But you can also have a signal phrase like mine. Notice I didn't mention debose up here, so that means I have to name debose at the end. There's another way to do this, and I can show you an example in a moment, but for right now, let's stick with what we got. And so the step is asking, determine if the parentheses are necessary after the signal phrase. Yes, in my case, for number 1, they're absolutely necessary because readers need to know the name of the person who said the quote and the page number it's on. So I'm going to go ahead and put those pieces of information in the parentheses at the end. Last step, if parentheses are necessary, put the appropriate information inside. Well, that's already done, but there is one last little thing that needs to be fixed. We have too many periods here. You only need one period in MLA, and it goes at the very end of everything. So this is essentially what your number 1 should look like. It's not the only way you can do it. There are other ways you can set this quote up. And so if you want a second version of it, you only need to give me one as your answer. But if you're somebody who likes to push themselves and you want to write maybe a different style of signal phrase, let me show you another way you can do it. So we'll begin with our quote. And we already know debose is the name of the author who said it, and we know the page it goes on. So let's begin with just a signal phrase, and we could say something like this. We could say, Dubose argues that when the superheroes are labeled vigilantes by the government, it is not simply because they're conservative where they should be liberal or vice versa. The issue is instead one of control. So notice, I put my author name in the signal phrase and it flows fine. I'm using the same verb, still flows fine, but I do need parentheses because we've got the author name in the signal, but we still need that page number. So these are 2 different ways you could approach your answer to number 1, and there are many other ways. As long as it flows nicely, I get the author name at some point and the page number at some point. Now, not every single one will play out the same way, and that's why you have all those support materials on the previous page. And so if you get to one that doesn't seem this cut and dry or this simple, go through your support materials and find the special rules that apply to the quote you're trying to format. But your finished answer in the end just needs to look something like one of these 2 examples. That's all you need for each one, and you'll have 10 of them. I hope this video helps. If you have any questions, go ahead and shoot me an email in Canvas, and I'll do my best to clarify.